Ed, how are you doing today?
There you go.
Hey, I'm fine. Well, until we get into the meeting.
Just personally, hope you're all right and everything. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving, ate as much as I did.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
good to eat.
Hello, Marvin.
Hey,
Get my text earlier?
I did, thank you. I knew this would be a warm place to tell, so that's why.
it feels warm.
Yeah, lots of night.
Good. I'll pull it off.
Marvin, I got back with Jerry, he's thinking afternoon time with Friday afternoon work.
Yes, if it's.
I'll read on. I'll let you do that off.
Okay, thank you.
I will look at the time.
I have. I have a duty.
Yes.
In trying.
That's my favorite.
Most of the contracting was myself. On a once in a vacation, we used to do Christmas parties and everybody there, everybody's like, oh, that was something across the year. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, hi, everybody have a good day, just, you know, I'm like.
He said he's open from noon to 3:30. So,
Starting, ending at 3:30,
yeah.
so with 2:30 work.
Yeah.
We got silly times. We had another one I thought, too. I guess it was from Ann, so that was.
And
Is this
she won't be able to attend.
agenda or? who's like-
Here's an agenda. How do we?
So that's-
I'm giving you the proxy because you are the chair.
Okay, got this. So since Ann already voted against this, we're already incorporated that into the meeting. Like, if the motion's made, then I've always heard her opinion.
Yeah, yeah, because she's not making.
No, but
Yeah.
the proposal still. Correct?
Yeah.
So I'll say, for, however it goes,
Yeah,
then,
if everyone approves it, then it'll be 5-1.
yeah, it's obviously, so she votes against it.
Yeah, she's in favor of it.
If everybody's against it, I still say, and all doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't really make.
That would be unanimous.
It's already unanimous.
Correct. It's not gonna matter, it must need to be for quorum, but
Right.
she would have to be here for quorum.
Regardless of the one. Okay, got
Is it just the access?
It should just be read as a.
Do it that way too.
Is it, because you're at this one, you have 2 letters.
Yes, that's
it.
correct.
So just against opposition.
All right.
Okay, perfect. So we'll do that as we finish up public testimony.
Am I reading both of those two
Yeah.
again?
Yeah, because you're good at it.
Yeah, that's just for the public testimony.
Perfect, yeah.
You're good at it.
Well, and, if they were both this short, I would read it. This is one.
Oh, yeah, one's too long. Even half the words I probably don't even know.
That's my English is not, my wife's English is better.
That's funny. So
Yes, I'm sure, so.
this is my boss and he's directly across from it. And he already said. Okay, did you see that on the list? I didn't see this part.
That's it. I have that.
I have that. I have it, you have it. Right? That's how it works. So Mark's number 1, because he's directly across
Here's one for you.
the whole building, the entrance,
Yeah.
right?
I didn't see this.
You didn't see that? Oh, well, there you go. You can have it.
No, I mean, no, it's probably in my packet. I didn't know. I didn't see it.
Yeah, I talked to him today. And, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What are you doing?
And the table.
Good.
Nothing much. What's the role?
Are you winterized? I'm doing exactly. No, my wife was still.
Yes, he does.
That place is
And then we
really
have a
awesome.
tax guy and then we hairdresser.
I go downstairs.
And,
Yeah.
Dion.
Yeah, and she might be listening. Oh, yeah. Do you have another? Hello.
What do
Do you have any more letters from Cindy left?
Here, I can read this one off. It's okay.
You need to give one to Kathy.
And do you need one from Ann too also?
No, she's got it.
She's got Ann's.
That was in the packet.
Okay.
And then this is from Cindy Neely. It's another opposition letter.
Okay.
Hello. Hello.
Ed, how are you? Good, how are you? Let's go grab that car and take it for a quick run.
Yeah.
Oh, we missed our window.
Well,
Yeah.
we have a house coming the driveway, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, look, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an email. That's not good.
I have, I think 15 different sounds on my phone, so I know which ones I actually need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Ones don't matter.
I was somewhere recently and it was in a store and it was a text message and it was mom. My favorite. It's funny, they're kid. It's so funny. Oh, everyone was laughing.
Okay, Jim, this thing shut off again.
Okay.
On second, it.
See the power button on the side?
You just have to, oh, there we go. Give me a second.
It times out.
Oh, gotcha, perfect. Where are we recording? All right, it's Wednesday, November 30th, 2022, 6:05 PM. And I call this meeting to order. Jen, you want to do the roll call?
Okay, Ed Hoover,
Here.
Denise Newton,
Here.
Chairman Kaczynski,
Here.
Kathleen Papp. Here.
All right, and see, motion to approve the agenda.
I motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This is for a public hearing rezoning application for 1600 Argentine Street. The applicant is Synergy Building Solutions, Jack Urbis. Request to change zoning from Gateway Commercial District to Multifamily District. I'll read the public hearing procedure just because it kind of got missed last time. I will open the application. Commission will question of staff first. Then we'll do the applicant presentation, commission questions of applicant, public testimony. Applicant and staff will respond to any questions raised by the public. And then we will close the hearing and ask for a commission discussion. And then we will make a motion at that time. So it's 6:06 and we're open the public hearing. So Rick.
I have a question for staff.
Yeah.
And it's. May just be a matter of how this is. But it says, request to change zoning from Gateway Commercial District to Multifamily District. What in reading the application from the new owner or about to be owner, it says they wanted to use high density housing as their description for, which would be a new zoning class, I would guess, for for Georgetown. I don't think we have anything called high density housing.
No, we don't. It would just be multifamily is the zoning we have.
And what is being proposed fits into
It does.
multifamily?
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll say a couple things and then I'll let Martin take over since Martin's online with us. I'll say a few things, let Martin do the report, and then I'm going to follow up with some things after that. And so first thing is, this has not been an easy application process. And, you know, it's been hard because part of it is it's new. And anytime when you do something new, it feels uncomfortable. Okay. And so it doesn't quite fit right in my mind when I review code. I'm trying to make it fit. And so we've been working on this application for months. And we've tried to go back and forth to find a way for this to work. Please mute. Thank you. And it seems to me that the only resolve that we can move forward would be a rezoning. Okay, and so we've tried everything our code doesn't allow. The zoning where this particular parcel is doesn't fit what the proposal is. And so after much discussion, going back to the drawing board, the applicant has decided to submit an application for rezoning in order to accomplish their goals. And so we reviewed it. It was Martin Landers, our planning consultant, Jerry Dahl, our town attorney, making sure that we're looking at the code clearly. Because again, I've got to be locked in on what the code says, and then myself. So it was us three. So this report is a reflection of our staff discussion. I will say this, our staff discussion was not in unison, that we fell out on many ways, in many areas, a different interpretation of answering questions. Does this meet? And so I'm going to let Martin review our staff's response. But I will say this, I did read the report and there's a couple things I want to clarify first and then let Martin go through it. There's in one section on page 2, on the first question, second bullet point, the very last sentence, it says the town supports the requested zone change. I would like to strike that because I think that's, we need to have information given to you and then you can make that decision. We can give you options of what kind of decision, you know, a recommendation that we would look, but I would like to strike that because in our discussion, we fell out completely on different ends. And I just think that's worth to note. And then the second thing to note, when it comes down to our recommendation, I would like to say there's actually 4 recommendations that we can give, not just 2. We have 2 here. The first one is to approve. The second one would be to approve with conditions. The third one would be to deny. And the fourth one would be continue or table for new information based on discussion. So those are really our 4 options. And at this point, we're not making that recommendation to you, but those are your 4 recommendations that you can make a decision. Okay, I just want to highlight that and then give it over to Martin and then come back for some more clarification.
Okay, thanks, Rick. I'm just going to provide an overview of the staff report that we prepared. I think all of you have that in your packets. That staff report should include the 3-page, 2.5-page memo that Rick was just referring to, along with the rezoning application and the DRC advisory report. This is the agenda item for this is the Roost rezoning. The applicant proposes to renovate and repurpose the existing Georgetown Lodge that's located at 1600 Argentine Street into a 57-unit micro unit apartment complex, and that is to be known as the Roost. This property is located in the Gateway Commercial Zone District currently. Apartments such as a micro unit development that's being proposed are not an allowed use in the Gateway Commercial Zone District. So for that reason, the applicant is proposing to rezone the property to the multifamily residential zone district, which does allow for multiple family dwellings such as apartments as a use by right. The Design Review Commission has reviewed this rezoning application and had no objection within the DRC's purview. And that is that recommendation, and some of the details to that are in that attachment that I just referenced. Now, there are 5 different criteria that the Board of Selectmen will be considering, and for your consideration as well in terms of a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And those 5 criteria are listed on page 2 of the application. The first criteria is whether there's been a change in the character or land uses in the neighborhood or the town warranting the requested rezoning. The second is whether the proposed zoning or rezoning will be consistent and blend with the character and land uses in the areas surrounding the land subject to the application. The third is whether the proposed zoning or rezoning is consistent with the guidelines, goals, and purposes contained in the town's comprehensive plan. The fourth is whether an error was made with respect to the original zoning designation for the property. And finally, the fifth one is whether the proposed zoning or rezoning will enhance or advance the public health, safety, and welfare. As Rick mentioned, staff has identified for each of these particular criteria our comments associated with this. And we do have, as I said, the attached rezoning application provided for the Planning Commission's review and action as well. I think I'll stop there and see if you have any questions, including whether or not you want me to go into any more detail regarding any of these proposed items within the criteria, the 5 criteria that I've mentioned.
Richard, you want to continue?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Like Martin said, this is an overview, and what he's presented to you is a concept. We don't have much more than what, except for some of the things that you and I had talked about, but at this point, it's still very conceptual of what we have. The criteria that we walked through, this was really difficult. So as staff, and it's not just me, but Martin and Jerry, as we talk through these things, I just kind of want to walk through and share some of my thoughts as well as you guys are contemplating and going over of yourselves what you've already read, but just some of my original comments were not mentioned, and so I just want to bring it up as how I was thinking. Number one, whether there has been a change in the character or land use in the neighborhood or the town warranting the requested zoning or rezoning. It's difficult because you can interpret this kind of different ways, but if I just take the face value of this, one is the town is not warranting this change. So that's an answer, no, the town is not warranting it. Second, has there been a change in the land use in the neighborhood? And the answer is no. We've not changed the land use, but you could say yes, because the need of the community is changing. Okay, need versus land use change is different. And so when I mean need, I meant the need for affordable housing, not market rate housing, affordable rate housing. But to answer the face value, nothing's changed in this area. It's commercial. And there's no other applications to try to make it less commercial, but the intent of our code was to make this area and preserve this because we don't have much land left. So the answer is no. The second one, whether the proposed zoning or rezoning will be consistent. So remember, the proposed zoning, will it be consistent and blend with the character and land uses in the surrounding area? Well, this too can be argued 2 ways. So when you look at the zoning map, can I bring a map and show you? So, I know, I'm just trying to find my bearings. Okay, so okay, this is I-70. This orange, can everyone see the orange? Okay, the orange is the Gateway Commercial. And if I were to find 12. Give me a second. 15th, okay, here we go. Roundabout. So if you look at, the question was, will this new proposed zone be consistent with the zoning around it, right? Or the use? So if I take the commercial zoning, here's 15th Street. There is nothing here that's other than commercial. If you were to take and look further down, this is where our multifamily section begins to come up. So in theory, you could say in the surrounding area, there is some multifamily. But as far as being consistent around it, it is not around it. This is commercial. We're talking about from this point over, even if it was on, I mean, if it was right here, I could easily argue and say yes, because it's abutting adjacent to. But that's not what this is. It's not abutting, it's not adjacent. You're talking about a one little block in the center of this that would then be rezoned. So, and it's in an area that is already congested, and we're talking about changing that. Would that be consistent? It doesn't affect and address the need, because we still need housing. But the question is, are we willing to let go of the current commercial for residential use? So I just wanted to bring that to your attention to see, because our staff interpretation fell out on different sides. But just the face value of the code, I'm arguing it is not consistent. Number 3, whether the proposed zoning or rezoning is consistent with the guidelines, goals, and purposes contained in and underlying the town's comprehensive plan. Our staff fell out on 2 different ways on this one as well. If I were to look at the town code, and I found specifically on page 10 of our comprehensive plan, under it says plan theme, a place where people live, and goals. It does mention that we will develop and nurture Georgetown's residential areas, provide high quality community services, faculty facilities, and support the enhancement and protection of our recreational and cultural amenities. I just want to remind you, the context was residential areas, not changing our residential or commercial areas to residential areas. So our comprehensive plan does highlight multiple times the need for affordable housing, and so that we would be consistent within our residential areas to soften our code to allow more residential affordable housing, not context commercial though. So I wanted to, our staff fell out in different areas on this and looking at, because the code does mention the need for affordable housing. I'm arguing context does not say change commercial to residential. Number 4 was an error made with respect to the original zoning designation. We all fell out on the same. None of us disagreed on the interpretation because there's no error. Number 5, whether the proposed zoning or rezoning will enhance or advance public health. This is where we too fell out on different interpretations of this. And it's difficult for me as a town administrator to try to understand and look at public health, public safety, these kind of things. And so I would say I have to lean on others who know this. And so that's why I would ask Randy if you can make a comment concerning your experience working with micro units. You know, I know your context really has been addressing the whole long-term stay in a short-term rental community, but you would know the health and safety of this area more than I could, or Martin or Jerry.
Do I want to speak right now?
Yeah, you're considered staff.
Yeah, I am. Good evening, anyone who attended this portion.
I think in response to Administrator's question, it's looking for something anecdotal about a development of this type. Already, there are issues with two extended stays at this particular facility. The fit and appropriateness of this just is not there. Public safety wise, it's an area that has high calls for service in a variety of areas. We're active there. Our police department is not getting bigger easily, any larger easily. We're trying, but we need the right people and they're just not presenting themselves. So we're still going to be stretched to add on to this. Doing this for a long time, cities that have areas like this, they are full of problems. Actually, there are so many restrictions. I worked in the city of Westminster and they tried this 30 years ago. And it was a failure and continues to be so. To look at some notes I have. First off, commercially, it's already an existing property that fills up every time the highway closes. Regularly, they're busy, and its purpose is already necessary. If you lose that, it's not going to be a benefit to the town or travelers or persons who actually participate in what it's intended for. Previous endeavors to provide affordable housing, recent endeavors, I have to say, seem to fail. They have not been successful in what I'm understanding has been presented. This one isn't going to be much different, except bring a little more detriment to that particular area. The need is definitely there for housing for anybody and everybody, but our need, versus the value of what this is going to bring us, just, it doesn't match up. So I think that might answer it. I think the best question is, this is high density housing, even though we don't have that articulated in our code. It is high density housing, and that's a whole different animal than just multifamily.
Thank you, Officer Williams, our chief officer.
I used to be a market.
So it is, it's hard to answer that. It's speculation because we don't know. We know some communities have not worked. I do know that our applicant has created a development very similar to Durango, and it seems to be very successful. And it is kind of a model of what they're wanting to do here. I say kind of a model because they're not building brand new. They're going to be, converting an existing use into something else. But I also say when it comes to the other question I have right now is just a public welfare. And we're talking about affordable workforce housing. So I ran some numbers and I just want to communicate to you what workforce numbers look like and to see if this falls into what we call affordable housing. So let's just take a scenario of someone making $15 an hour to, what do you think, $22 an hour? Would that be our range of what our workplace? No.
14 to 18 here.
Okay, well, I got those numbers. I'm going to say $15 to $18 an hour. That'd be our workforce. What that $15 an hour for the whole year is $31,200. $18 an hour for the year is $37,440. If you were to break that up in monthly, what does that look like monthly? At $15 an hour, monthly, that is $2,400. $18 an hour is $2,880. That's what they make for a month.
That's if they work 40 hours.
That's correct. That's 40 hours of
Remember that.
consistently 40 hours. And, when you look at healthy statistic numbers, they say, what should a portion of your monthly should go towards rent or housing? 30% is a number that I consistently see. 30% of someone making $15 an hour at $2,400 a month, that's $720 monthly.
Right.
Somebody at $18 an hour is $28.80, and that should be 30% would be $864. Okay, that would be affordable for our workforce. I even went up to the highest, $25 an hour. And that would come up to for 30% of which is $4,000 a month, that would be $1,200. That is, now that's a little above our workforce. When we say workforce housing, I wanted to follow that parameters. Our rents should fall under the 720 to 864 in order to be affordable, especially when you think about micro units of, I don't know the exact square foot, but I would estimate based on our conversation of 225 square feet per unit to 250. 300?
little less, 270.
Okay, so less than 300. I mean, it's gonna have to be affordable. And so I know the numbers that have been thrown out is like 1,200 to 1,600. That is above our workforce. That is market rate now. And I'm arguing two things. That is not good. I mean, so when I think of public welfare, again, I'm doing my due diligence to present to you. I want to see this work, but I want to see it to be affordable. And I'm concerned that it's not going to be affordable for our workforce class. If these numbers for rent are used from Durango to here, which is that 1,200 to 1,600 range, then what I'm afraid of is this. If you do an analysis and you do homeowners versus renters, if you're a homeowner and you have a house, say 3,000 square feet, and a developer puts around you 1,500 square feet homes, it's going to pull your house value down. And you can easily argue and say, well, the more you have of this will actually pull it down. I believe it's the actually opposite effect when it comes to the renting market. Because if he can get 1,600 for 300 square feet, what is that going to say to the other renters and the other developers? Well, there's a ceiling. I can easily now make that the bottom. What he's getting 1,600, I'm going to double it. So now it's actually the potential. This is all speculation, but the potential is what I'm concerned about is the long-term effect of bringing in units like this will actually cause us to go higher. And I'm concerned about that unless we can work out something in order to mitigate that. And again, this is not a new development. This is a rezoning. Are we willing to rezone for something like this? Because what does that do? It sets a precedent for others to come in and do the same thing. It's like, are we ready for that? Because I'm like, there's only a couple times where we have a chance to protect what we're doing without making major catastrophic decisions that we can't undo. And so that's what I'm saying. As we think through this, I think it's a great idea. I like the development. I like what he's doing. And it also has a great potential to beautify a front part of our community that you first see. But I want to make sure that it is done exactly the way we want it done and not brought into of an outsider coming in to change something that we don't want. So that's my comments to you. I know some of this I'm trying to think long-term, but that's the staff report. And I want to make sure there's some balance in that as we talk through it.
Randy, I have a question, Rick, sorry. I have a question regarding the apartments that are here. Is there a general sense of the average size of an apartment here, or are they all over the place?
They're kind of all over the place. I mean, apartments here are going to be probably from 600 to 1,200 square feet.
Okay, so if we took let's split the difference somewhere in there and say, let's say somebody gets an 800 square foot apartment. What would they be paying for that in town now?
Well, currently you have examples. Bighorn Crossing is around 800 square feet and they're getting 1,800 to 2,400, depending on the square feet.
Okay. You know, and then if you're cutting that in half by, I don't know, roughly a third, does that mean that this then would be, I mean,
It's speculation. It's hard to answer that.
I guess I would say, regardless of that, I would say that this is not a worker housing project.
No. This is a
So-
market rate project.
It's a market rate project.
It is.
And I suspect that on a per square foot basis, it probably costs more for this type of unit than it does per square foot, than it does for most of the apartments that are still around in town.
That is a correct statement.
So I mean, I think we just take off the table that this is meant to fulfill something that is not here in town. Beyond that, I don't know, I mean, we just added, I don't know how many units down at Bighorn.
And they just raised their rents.
Yeah.
From 1,800 to 2,400.
Are people paying it?
They don't have a choice.
Okay,
but
The
this-
letter was given to all of them.
But this is not a substitute for that.
No, this is
Okay.
not an alternative because we're talking, what if it's a couple? What if it's a couple with a child? That's not gonna fit in this paradigm. This is for a single person.
Right.
Now,
That's for footage.
you can have two people, but it's gonna be temporary because it's gonna be tight.
Well, and my question for you, Rick, too, is, you know, when we throw affordable housing out there, where is that guarantee? Because I don't find in here that is it work through the town? How does that work? If somebody says I want to go affordable, because people have mentioned it before, and then it doesn't happen. So I'm not seeing it here. So just once again, I just want to make sure that it is more market rate is what, that's the discussion. This is a market rate, not an affordable housing.
Correct. Again, it's a challenge as we're discussing this because it was
Right.
proposed to us as workforce housing. And so that's all I can evaluate is based on workforce housing to do numbers. Most likely he could come back and bring other numbers to us to show that he's going to fall in there. Another suggestion is we put conditions so that it would follow a workforce model. But if he doesn't do that, then it's up to him to make the change to fit code or bring back something that fits what then our need is.
Well, yeah, and I just want to make sure that the board understands that the numbers that you produced, based on what we live in this community, we know what people make here. Considering that as workforce, whether or not the applicant understands that or not, that it's, if we're basing our decision on, oh, cool, we get affordable workforce housing, that gets held into place.
Right.
That there is something that binds that.
Right. But what we're challenged for tonight
Right.
is to have Blinders rezoned.
Right.
And, you know, he brings it, this doesn't, just because he can rezone it doesn't mean he's authorized because it's a concept. It would have to come back again. So what would happen was go back to DRC and then they did their comment. I just want to highlight this and I can't see it. Where's the DRC's? I just want to highlight, it says that they have no objection with DRC purview. And the reason why they said it is because they would not consider it.
Right.
They're not going to look at it right now. It's out of their jurisdiction. We have no comments, we're not going to object because they can't. So it is not an in favor letter by no means. It's meaning it's going to come back to them if we choose to rezone, and that's why we have to stay to the parameters of a rezone. If it meets the parameters of a rezone, then it goes back and now it's going to be a microscope to look at it. But it's like, are the information presented to you not part of the package? It's hard to divorce that. Because it's like you need to know what you're getting involved in and why you're wanting to rezone that. And so that's why I walk through this very slowly for you to understand what's at stake and how the applicant had to answer these questions as well.
It seems to me that they have to give a reason for the rezoning. And if their reason for the rezoning is for workforce housing or more affordable housing, they have not proven that that's what they're going to do. And on that basis, I would turn the application down.
Well, I think we should hear from the applicant too.
Well, of course, yeah.
We don't have a chance to respond.
That's why I was asking Kathy, if you're like, what binds that to the town when people use that term? Because it's gotten passed up in the past, people said, but, and there is that, I don't understand how that works, because at this time, it's just people saying that they're gonna do it. They threw numbers out there. And that's why I was asking, Rick, just to make sure we're all fully aware of that. Do you have any questions, Ed, for the staff?
I'm with that in the position. to try to rezone that property at all.
You don't have any questions for Rick?
No.
I do. This is a major it's not a question, it's a statement. This is a major intersection to town. When that highway closes down, it's important to keep it flowing free. It's important to have that as a commercial zone. And if somebody would want to put a hotel there, that would be awesome. I just think it needs to stay kind of the way it is, as far as zoning is concerned.
Randy, I have a question for you. The roundabout. Let's talk about that. When 70 closes, you have policemen out there to direct traffic, correct? And it gets really crazy.
It's difficult to answer because we have currently 2 officers.
I guess.
And if there's a call for service, that's down to 1 officer. If an officer can't make it up here because the highway is closed, that's down to 0 officers. But we try to manage traffic in town when the highway closes. When we have not managed it, it's, to use the vernacular, business in the butt. Everybody's only inclination, and this is just the public, is to get off the highway and wait till it opens, no matter what traffic impediment they're creating. And when we need a fire truck or an ambulance or an emergency vehicle from that direction, they can't get there.
Correct.
If we let it go even more unmanaged, it leads into the neighborhoods. We've seen times where you couldn't get either direction in the neighborhood for 3 to 4 hours with nobody being able to move either direction.
You're right.
There's a lot of management. I don't think that is answering the question you asked, but I
It's close
thought
to
I'd
it.
throw it in there. We do, when necessary, when the town is just filled up, because it's a fine line between our commerce and people being able to come in and go to the businesses. But when it's in mid-afternoon, late afternoon, those businesses are going to close and they're still waiting here. It creates us having to redirect traffic back eastbound.
So public safety is an issue at that roundabout, roughly.
Absolutely.
And we have a lot of walkers in town.
Walkers?
Yes, we have a lot of walkers in town.
No, we do.
We
Yes.
absolutely.
We have a lot of
do.
bikers too.
I don't know how that fits when we have those conditions.
Right,
but
it doesn't. It's hard to get in and out of there when there's a lot going on. You got the train being released, you got 70 backed up, you got people using the access roads. So there is a lot of public safety issues. Right,
So
just what we're dealing with besides having
it's
something
it's
new.
definitely one of these bigger issue.
Okay, thank you.
That's something I didn't consider.
Wow.
I didn't consider that because, yeah, when you change that from commercial to residential.
Oh, you got 57 units, you got 2 people on a unit, so how many more people do we add to the mix? And like, this is an entryway into Georgetown. We put a lot of money into that. We made it beautiful for people to come in too. And there's a lot of traffic on it a lot of times. It's hard.
All right, well, let's move on to if anybody have any more questions for the staff? Everybody kind of want to do that. Let's move on to the applicant presentation. Jack Arbitz, is that how you say your name?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. We've kind of gone through some stuff, but tell us your.
Yeah, and I did bring a PowerPoint presentation, I think could help to describe the project. So my name's Jack Arbus, I'm the president of Synergy, the applicant, the developer, local developer out of Denver, who, there's should be 2 things on there.
Okay, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Under Georgetown PP Trust, I'm guessing?
That's the one. So I'm gonna follow the PowerPoint presentation, but I did want to just comment on one thing. I've been very careful to describe this as attainable housing. It could be semantics, vernacular, anything you want to say. I've avoided affordable because affordable with a large A is generally a capital A, means some kind of restrictions who can rent there based on their income or other situations they have in their life. So this is not what we are proposing, and I don't want that to be out there because we're not. It is market rate, as Rick said. We call it attainable because we're coming into a market, as we've done in other markets, where we are offering we're offering something that doesn't exist there already, whether that's $800, $1,000, $1,500, it doesn't really matter. It's what the market will bear for the people that need it in that market. As a developer, sure, we would love to come into town and say, great, $3,000 a month. The only person that's going to suffer is me and my partner from the risk we're taking. We're doing that. So we have to be at market. And I just wanted to clear that up because the market is the market and we understand the market pretty well. I wouldn't say we know the market in Georgetown the way people in Georgetown do as well, but we do. We've just finished a very similar project that Rick discussed, brought up in Durango. It was a 1960s similar vintage Holiday Inn. It was 140 units of some. I saw in the report that it said 250 something. That was an error. It's 140 units. Very similar concept, and I have some photos that I'll show you. That is being received very well. Very similar situation, but bigger town, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. And everybody has this in their packet, and this is just simply the site plan as it sits right now with some modifications showing traffic flow and parking. We are proposing somewhere between 50 and 60 units. It'll depend on what happens with the building at the front as you come in, which is now being used as a front desk, administration, restaurant that is not running, but there's a restaurant there. And then the upper floor, which is being used for the current owner's suite or premises. That's where he lives. So we would convert that building to some community uses and change around some of the configurations of some of the rooms to mostly micro units and some one bedrooms as well. Majority will be micro units. Micro units are typically in this situation, you've got 275 square feet average, and those are the same size that we have in Durango. When I say it's similar to Durango, I don't mean to paint you with the same brush because that's not going to be the same. But Durango had a housing problem where they needed a more attainable product for their workforce. Their businesses were asking for it. Their workers, their residents were asking for it. Durango opened their arms to us, made the process fairly simple, or fairly quick, not simple. And we finished that project up, and it's being leased now, and it's being received very, very well. I have heard some things from staff from DRC and a little bit here about the size of those units. They really are for single people, or couples. Our motto with our brand that we have here, we're proposing here, we have in Denver, we have in Durango, we're doing it in Buena Vista, Univista, and in Grand Junction. The concept is smaller spaces so people can afford them and great common area inside and outside to create community. When I think about where, comparing this to where we are today with Georgetown Lodge, I'm going to be careful. I'm not going to just trash that place, but the truth of the matter is that it is in great need of something else, whatever that is, whether it's me that comes in and does it, or something else. I don't think anyone would argue that that place is in great need of its next chapter. Let's just say that. So if you wouldn't mind changing to the next slide. basically what I'm saying here is that's the picture, obviously, of the existing use, the Georgetown Lodge. It's 70s construction. It's a transient demographic that stays there. It's a crime magnet. Because of that, it serves a purpose, no doubt. It's the cheapest hotel probably in town. It services a lot of truckers and stuff that are getting stuck on the highway. It happens fairly often on 70, as we all know. But I think this place for Georgetown is really in great need of its next chapter. And I don't think that this is the kind of quote unquote gateway that the people of Georgetown want when they drive in, sort of a derelict rundown hotel, which is really often in single digits of occupancy. I've been there probably 50 times since I placed it under contract almost a year ago or 8 months ago, whenever it was. I've never seen more than 5 or 6 cars in the parking lot. So next slide, if you wouldn't mind. My eyes aren't great, so I'm going to move in. I put this up there. My apologies to anybody who enjoys staying there, but these are the Yelp and TripAdvisor comments for that hotel. Okay, worst hotel ever, bed bugs, blah blah blah. In fairness, okay, I took 3 really good ones, right? But in fairness, most of them are like that. There are some that say place was fine. It was a cheap stay and it worked for my needs. You know, I'm not saying every single one is like that, but the overwhelming majority is that. And all that really says is that the place is tired. It doesn't have the care that the community deserves in any way, shape, or form. I think that that's a pretty easy argument to make. And you can go on Yelp and TripAdvisor and go through probably 100 comments. 90% of them are like that. So our brand, The Roost, our motto, as I said, is live small, play large. Break down the size of your unit to get it to be more attainable, more affordable, small A affordable, and you live your life outside. You work outside, you play outside, you're in the mountains, and that's a great thing to talk about. But what kind of community are we going to be creating there? And I think that with the common spaces, common area spaces, which I'm going to show some pictures of and get into in a second, you'll see how we intend to build community while we're servicing Georgetown and the community, the county around us, as a really solid option. We all know there's a housing crisis. It's not just in Georgetown, it's all through Colorado, it's all through the US. It's particularly bad in the mountains, and it's gotten even worse since COVID. The prices have skyrocketed. And so we know that, we know there's a crisis. We think that this is a win-win for everybody. We think we can provide a really cool, hip, modern, functional apartment complex for people that serves the businesses of Georgetown and the county. It serves the people that are the leadership in this community that are running business here. And we think the people here need it. So we feel like it's a win-win deal. And we also feel that there's, I think the gentleman with the police force had mentioned that a lot of people have come in talking about doing affordable housing. Well, you know, my beard is gray. I've been doing this for a long time. And I know that every year it gets harder, but to come into any town, in any place, and try to do something new takes a tremendous amount of time. Time is money. And in the mountains, it's 2 or 3x harder to do because the season is shorter for construction. People have a bigger stake in things, so people are more involved, and that's a good thing. And it just takes more time to get to get 50 new units of attainable, affordable type housing in any place like Georgetown or anywhere else in the mountains will take years. Plain and simple. This will bring the units to the community in months. So the next, please. So, and I have a larger format here. It's not so easy to see here, but you also have it, I think, in your packet. So that just gives you an idea of how we see this happening. It's very similar to what we've done in Durango. It's similar to what has been done by other developers in places like Jackson, and really all over the mountains of the Mountain West in not just Colorado. We call this sort of mountain modern. We think it would be really handsome place to look at when you enter town, and everybody will see it when they enter town. So live small, play large. These are actual photos of the units in Durango. These are 275 to 287 square feet. They have full functioning kitchens. They have room to actually sit down and eat something, and they have modern new bathrooms. So we're taking the shell, we're modernizing it. This place needs sprinklers. It doesn't have sprinklers at the moment. It's going to be brought up to code if we achieve our goal here. And with that, the place will be completely modernized and brought up to code, electrical and fire code issues, fire life safety issues. So it's a small place, there's no doubt. That's sort of where things are going in our world, because in order to get places to be easier on your pocketbook, there's only really one way to do it in a popular place like Colorado. That's make these places smaller. And that doesn't mean make them not as decent a place to live. That doesn't mean that at all. Small doesn't mean bad. When it goes small, they have to be clever on how you design them. And we think we've done that there. And I think that really shows, you know, and those are actual photographs. There's no AI there. There's no photoshopping. Those are actual photos of the units. And they're leasing up really well. We just started leasing them, yes, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. And, you know, we're getting 8-10 people coming in there almost every day, and we're leasing them up, and we'll be shooting leased up there very, very soon, if not by the end of the year. And that's 140 units. So I want to talk a little bit about the common areas, that what's going to make this place special, and give people a place of community, a pride of community, not transient, not sort of coming in and not having any stake in where they live and where they're going and what they're doing. This slide here shows some of the common areas. This is actually in Durango again, and this is pictures of the lobby of the common area where we have, like, you know, a little pool table. We have a fireplace. You know, we have a place for people just to hang out, get out of their house if they want to do that, and go there. So great places to gather. If you wouldn't mind, next slide, please. Great place to work. We intend to do similar to what we did in Durango, is to have a co-working area there. So people that, you know, want to get out of their apartment and maybe go in a more communal area will have a place where they can work. This could also be a place not just for the residents, and the residents would have priority, obviously, but if there's anyone else in town that wanted to use it, they could use it maybe for, you know, this hasn't really worked out. It's not really necessary in Durango because I think there's 2 other co-work places, but that would be the intent of what we would do with some common area space there. Next slide, please. So these are some of what, you know, I have to unabashedly just call sort of the selling points of this. And you know, again, we know there's a housing problem here. It's availability, it's affordability, it's how quickly or lack of quickness it takes to bring anything to market. And I'm not saying Georgetown, just any place in the mountains. Working people know this, the businesses know this. I've spoken to several businesses in town. They all say they need places for workers. They can't get workers because there's no place to live. We know it's a real problem. And I think that the Roost concept that we're proposing for Georgetown is an answer to that. We're building community spaces, both inside the building. I've shown you some examples of that. And the space that we have on the outside, it's limited, but it can be used with clever land planning and clever landscape architecture and stuff. We can make the exteriors work too, with fire pits and dog run areas. And this would be a pet-friendly project. It would also be state of the art. Everything we're doing now in Denver and Durango and all these other places we've mentioned, it's state of the art smart technology for security. So people have access, whether if they're really tech savvy, everything's done from their phone. Video conferencing of people trying to get in common areas so they can let somebody in. They can be out of town, they can let somebody in their apartment if it's a relative or a cleaning person, whatever. So we're big on that. We think that's really important for security. And another thing that I think is really important is, I've talked a little bit about building new versus repurposing existing buildings. It's good for the environment, and it's a much smaller carbon footprint, which we're big believers in. And we think that's important. So all of these things, I say, who's the winner here? And I really believe the town, the county, the people who are going to live there, businesses, we want to do this. We want to continue to build this concept in different mountain towns around the state. Get the rest of it.
That was the last one.
There's a few more.
Okay, but on mine, that was the last
Yeah, I think
one. I'll show you.
we missed a couple then. I wanted to, it doesn't matter. There, some of the common areas that we plan on providing are, a workout area, dog wash stations, places to keep your equipment, whether it's bicycles, and skis and things like that. So we think it's we think the Roost brand and the Roost concept is a good thing for a community like Georgetown, and we would look forward to bringing this here and doing the right thing here. I think it will improve a lot of things. It will improve safety in the community, the look of the property, and I'm open to any questions that anybody may have.
I think that was a awesome presentation. I've got a question for you. You said you've done the one in Durango, and you're renting them out quick. The issue that we have here, and I'm glad you clarified, more fair market value versus affordable housing. We kind of do have a good understanding of what it takes for people to afford to live here. I love kind of what you did with those places, having the open space and stuff. I think that's huge. I think it keeps people more long-term, even though it's small. But when it comes to like Durango, I don't know that area. So do people typically make more money there, or is it, you find that that's more like people just rent those out more for vacation places, or is that long-term for them?
It's long-term, as this would be. And really what happens is the people who can least afford to live in these towns, they're getting squeezed to the bottom.
Right.
And so whether the average income is 40,000 in Durango, and I'm making that number up, and it's say 35 here, is almost irrelevant, because it's those people that are getting squeezed out of these places that are badly needed. I mean, the coffee shops, the restaurants, the brewery, the hotels, they all need workers, and those are not high-paying jobs. And those people need to stay. So we stay someplace. They need to have a place that they can call their own, that they're safe, it's clean, it's modern, they like living there. It's not a burden for them to come to Durango or Georgetown or Univista. They've got a great place that they have an option to live in a great place. So the income disparity might be a little bit different. You might have higher income, and I think you probably do in Durango, but it's still the same. It's still those people that fall to the bottom that really need this type of housing. And we think the special sauce, honestly, is repurposing of buildings, because trying to do this and build new, we would never, ever be able to get close, not even close to the kind of rents that we think will work in Georgetown or Durango.
Well, I fully appreciate that because understanding building and construction numbers, that's what's always tough. People that want to do true affordable housing, but then you lose your investment because you're a business, you know, so I can respect that too. The hardest part is for me is where it's at, because we are so limited for commercial also. We definitely need more housing, but then it's tough to want to lose commercial space that is where that's at. You know, it'd be different for me if it was, you know, just across the street even, or just outside of a little area that's kind of cornered in, that just kind of says commercial on it. You guys have any questions for the applicant?
Hi, yes, and I'm not sure it's entirely, I mean, first of all, let me just say, there are no places where we can add commercial around here. So when we take away that commercial, even though it seems like it's underutilized as commercial space at this point, we have no way of getting it back. So I think if we look at that as a balance, that's a part of the thing. And the other is more of a comment than a question, which is, you know, I appreciate your differentiation between affordable and attainable, but if you can't even attain it, in other words, if you're really just down to where you go to work and you eat hot dogs all the whole time because this is the best you could do, that's not a good situation either. So I'm not sure that, you know, I guess I would say, first of all, my goal would be to hang on to what commercial space we do have here in the zoning. But the other point is that if you could show that this would meet another need, and I'm not sure you have shown that because of the affordability of it, even if it's a lowercase a, then it makes it all the more difficult for me to agree to that zoning change. And that also opens the door to other people asking for a similar zoning change. Well, you gave it to this person, why not more now? So I'm throwing that out. If you want to comment on that,
Yeah.
I'd welcome the comments.
I think, you know, the affordable, like, again,
I know.
the uppercase affordable, that is really the purview of more government entities.
Mhm.
That's, you know, the reason that those things are subsidized, they serve an amazing purpose, there's no doubt about it. But they can only really be done any place by government entities who can subsidize. You know, business can't subsidize that. So, but on the other hand, you know, we're intelligent enough and experienced enough that we wouldn't come into a beautiful place like Georgetown and spend millions of dollars, which is, you know, this will end up being probably, you know, $7-8 million project by the end of the day. And that'll bring, you know, 50 or 60 new people living in town and the benefits to business and everything else. We wouldn't do that if we didn't feel strongly that there's a component of the demographic that's willing to do that. And the new townhomes and apartments or apartments that are down by the lake is a great example of that. You know, you raise your rent by 30-40%, and no one balks. The only reason they don't balk is because there's no place to go. And you know, if there were options, people might say, you know what, I'd rather live instead of with a roommate. I'd rather live on my own, have a really comfortable, nice place in a nice little community like the Roost we're proposing. And it's an option. Without optionality, you know, you're stuck. Either they leave, which is not good for the town or the businesses, or they're forced to live someplace maybe they don't want to. You know, those are beautiful there. I mean, those are great. That's a great community. You know, and that's an option. And this is another option, potentially.
Well, let me, in terms of how this may be completely out of your interest, but at this point, one of the things we've been talking about in the commercial area, just in general, not related to this, is commercial is key. And if you wanted to have apartments above the commercial, one could do that, but the commercial has to be there and functioning. You've got 3 buildings here. 4, yeah, okay, well, you know, there's one that's particularly out front and the others are back away from it. Could it be that you would be interested in a multi-use kind of project where you could take the most visible piece of that project and use it as commercial? And then put the kind of residential units you're talking about at the back of that property?
We've thought carefully about this. As Rick mentioned earlier, we spent a lot of this time discussing this and going through this, and Rick has helped us to sort of like try to figure out a way to best explain this and to get it in front of everybody. If just being completely transparent and honest here, I don't believe that commercial will work there like that. Commercial needs, commercial needs to work a certain way. That is sort of putting a round peg in a square hole. To put commercial and residential and cohabitate together. I come from a really big city, of 10 million people, and it's cities like that, and barely that can make residential over commercial. They don't work in small towns like even Denver. You don't see it. You'll see it downtown with high rises, but you don't really see what you're talking about because they're not really compatible. They have different ways of accessing the 2 different types of uses, and it doesn't really work. So I wouldn't be interested in that. However, we did talk at one point, and Rick, I think you remember this, the building that's out front, the one you're referring to, using that for commercial purposes. And I say that somewhat reluctantly, only because I think it would serve the community of people that we're proposing to live in these units better to have common area for them than to have commercial for the entire world, people coming off of 70, people in town, county, and so on. The other thing that we have on the site plan is a piece of property at the back of the north side. I can show you. So I don't know if you can see this. This is the same slide that was up there, but there's a piece of property back here which doesn't take away from the parking for this, that can be developed in the future or as a hotel. I can stand up before you and say as for commercial, but I wouldn't, that wouldn't be right to say because that will never work. If this won't work for commercial, this will never work for commercial, like a retail kind of use. But it could very well be a hotel. There's access off of Argentine, and it's visible from the highway. There could be signage that would make it highly visible with huge traffic counts. And that's something that we've discussed all along, and would be willing to talk about that. I wouldn't do it as a condition. I mean, I would be happy, I think, to keep this area conditional, like going on the plat as commercial for a future hotel pad, and I think it would work. But we're not hotel guys. Like that's not my expertise. And if we were going to do it, we would sell it to or co-develop it or sell it to a hotel operator who's in the hospitality business. We're in the hospitality business, so that's what we know best. Is that?
It answers the question.
Okay.
By the way, your north arrow is in the wrong direction.
My which?
North arrow.
Yeah, I know. It's really not happening.
Here, a quick question. Basically, what if How many spots, parking spots would be allowable for that? Is it just one in per unit, but then you need, what, 60, 70 parking spots? Is that?
I don't know. I'd have to look up to see what the formula is. It's,
Gotcha.
maybe 1.5 to every space. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. 1.5.
Because
Yeah, so this is 75, this is 74, it's rated, currently it's 1.1, that doesn't include this area that I mentioned up there, so. Again, if we kind of step back from maybe rules of thumb, these are typically gonna have one person in them. So that would be 50 or 60 spots, we've got 74. We build in different places, albeit Georgetown is unique. It's in a canyon, it's tight, there's not a lot of room for things, but we have places that we're building and have built that it's 0.75 spots. It just depends. That wouldn't work here because there's not really transit here, but 1-to-1, I believe, would be a minimum here, and we're slightly above that. That's my opinion. Of course, that's a zoning and a planning issue, but.
Or it would be a future variance issue if you couldn't get it.
I'm not aware that it is at 1.5, but if it is, then I guess that would be a variance, or we would eliminate the future commercial here and use it for parking.
Ed, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yeah,
Denise?
I'm good.
Gotcha. Then no more further questions.
Thank you very much.
Public testimony, anybody in the audience?
Thank you, Craig Abrahamson, 815 Main Street. My wife and I own several businesses here in Georgetown, and let me start by saying I'm a fan of workforce housing in the right context. It's near and dear to me. My wife and I employ between the two of us over 40 people here in Georgetown. We know it's an issue. It's an issue that we want to address. My 17-year-old son is a senior. One of his big concerns is whether or not he'll be able to afford to continue to live here. So it's something that's very personal to us, and it affects our businesses. So I'm just going to qualify my upcoming statements with that caveat. The bottom line is this kind of doesn't work. There's simply no criteria by which this can be rezoned without considering a change in the ordinance, because it simply doesn't meet any of the 5 criteria that are spelled out by the ordinance. There's been no change in character or the land use in the neighborhood or the town. If anything, the existing land uses that were contemplated when the zoning map was put together and the district was put together have only intensified. They haven't changed, they've only intensified. The demand for commercial space has intensified, the demand for residential areas has intensified. It's not consistent or blend with the character and land use in the surrounding area. The surrounding area is purely commercial. It's not multifamily, it's not residential, it's not even mixed use. To say that affordable housing is a new issue in Georgetown and therefore a change in condition is simply not accurate. 1972, my dad worked for $2 an hour, at a ski area, trying to figure out how he was going to pay the rent. It's always been an issue here. It's more intense now, perhaps, but it's not a change in condition that would justify changing the land use of a parcel completely surrounded by strictly commercial uses and zoning. There was no error in the original zoning. Quite frankly, I don't know how they did such a good job. No, they really, I mean, those who were involved in creating the zoning map for Georgetown really knocked it out of the park. Changing that should involve the same level of care and consideration that went into creating it in the first place, which was a years-long process that involved the public and professionals alike, providing input to create the character that we're trying to protect through that zoning. And on the health and safety component, you simply can't argue that creating affordable, attainable workforce, call it what you will, housing in a high traffic area immediately adjacent to a commercial area and an interstate highway is promoting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. There's just so from a completely objective perspective, forget the opinion part of it. There's simply no justification for this rezoning. There are other avenues. Jack and I met a year ago when he first came to town, and I suggested that there were alternatives and means by which, and some of those have come up tonight. The town has, I'm going to estimate on the order of, we'll call it just conservatively 7 or 8 acres of appropriately zoned property for a project like this. Some of it is owned by the town, some of it is owned by private parties, some of it is by the lake. This project is doable, not by repurposing this particular property, because this property simply, this is not a highest and best use kind of project for that particular property. There are properties though that have been carefully considered to be appropriate for multifamily use that are available for development for this specific kind of purpose. And in that context, I just simply don't see how one can argue that this is an appropriate rezoning. So thank you. I've got to run. I don't mean to be rude. I've got someplace else I've got to meet.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
I'm Mark Geismas, 917 2nd Street. Also the managing partner, owner of Baker Anderson LLC, which is probably, besides the town, the largest property owner around this property. We own 1,500 Argentine that's occupied by Cooper's Own Creek, and the vacant land. Excuse me, I don't have a cold or an illness. I've been seeing a doctor or something to fight through. It's not working. The vacant land north of the Family Dollar is also what we own, and that's commercial, and we plan to develop that into something that's appropriate in the zoning code. I applaud Rick for his presentation. It's probably the most thoughtful city manager presentation that I've seen in the many years that I've been here on a project. And also the comments that Craig has just made. My feeling is that this is not the best and highest use for that property. So as a planning commission, that would seem to me to be one of the best things that I would want to hang my hat on. Are we down zoning and spot zoning into something that is not the best and highest use? And what is the definition of that? It is probably sales tax generation or potentially the pillow tax generation. This is not going to produce any kind of sales tax that I can think of. It could potentially enhance the property tax, but that's a very small return to the town. You're giving up the potential for redevelopment into something that would have a great increase in sales tax and potentially pillow tax. It also could affect the kind of development that's desirable around it, including the property that I own next to the Family Dollar. There's the safety issue that's been gone over many times tonight. The one thing that hasn't been brought up, there was a comprehensive plan commissioned by the town several years ago, and the property just to the north on the same side of the street where all the road is sitting today was identified as a prime location for a transit center in town. And that would create a great deal of additional traffic. There's some beautiful plans that were thought about for that property, but it's not consistent with residential. It is consistent with best and highest use of that property, bringing in
potentially sales tax dollars in businesses that would be developed around it and other existing businesses in town, not this development. So my recommendation by plead is do not downzone this property. What you're doing is limiting the amount of future development that's much richer for the town. But it also, I think we all know that this is a snowball, a domino that is going to cause other properties within the existing gateway commercial to come and ask for the same down zoning. They're out there, they're gonna happen. So I really hope that you keep this commercial as it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Geisman. Do you have any other public testimony?
Yeah, 2 letters.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Anne's actually here.
So I don't have to read hers. You serious?
Yep, it's no fun.
Hi, Rick. I am unable to attend tonight's planning commission meeting, so I hope that you will express these
Can
two
you
concerns.
say who it's from?
Oh, sure. It's from Cindy Neely, the project manager. She's with the DRC.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Rick. I am unable to attend tonight's planning commission meeting, so I hope that you will express these two concerns about the request for rezoning on my behalf. This relates to the memo presented to the PC, which is the Planning Commission, by the contract planning staff. The memo states that the town supports the project. Perhaps the planner supports this project personally. The town has no position, and this appears to be a blatant attempt to pressure and undermine the Planning Commission, which actually represents more of the town than the planner does. If contract staff is permitted to have such opinion as these, please indicate that I, also contract staff, do not support this application. Number 2, the application asks for a residential development in a commercially zoned directly adjacent to the town's entry. Georgetown has spent 20 years of several $1 million on improving the entryway as the commercial zone. We have little other commercial space, and I believe it is short-term thinking to turn it over to residential. I strongly urge the Planning Commission to advise the Board of Selectmen to not change the zoning. That would be my point of view, no matter what residential project was proposed. However, this project in particular makes the opinion stronger, as it would create an extraordinary dense residential facility for short-term renters and not provide any adequate worker housing. Thanks, Cindy.
It for the public testimony. Rick, as you represent the staff, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I'm just thinking how I can articulate. You and I have spoke for months, and I have given you lots of reservations of even coming here tonight. I have asked, could you conform to the code multiple times? You know, bring a commercial component. And we even kind of mulled over the interpretation of the code. And even had our attorney give a definition of the code to try to show you that there is a strong component of commercial required. It's also brought us back to the point of changing the code in order to satisfy and not let go of our commercial, but add residential component to the top, which you've already communicated doesn't work for your model. I'm also from an area that was very dense. Augusta, I lived downtown in Augusta, where it did work very well. And I've seen it, and it was a thriving environment. I loved it because it was kind of spun as there's a place for you. It didn't matter who you were. If you were rich, low income, there's a place for you because all these units were different. And so I loved it. I loved diversity and living like that. But Georgetown's different. Part of what I would love to see you do, Jack, is to bring a product that Georgetown wants. We are desperate for workforce housing. We don't need more market rate housing. And I feel like the market rate is you got a few people who are controlled entities from out of town continue to raise our rents, and it's hurting us. And it's going to cause our people to leave, and it'll do the same thing that the housing market's doing. The real estate agents jacked it up. It didn't sustain. They raised interest rates, and now it can drop. So the market will solve itself. And I'm a big proponent of those kind of things. But for our need right now is I can't see our community doing this. And I cannot justify losing our commercial space. I would love for you to bring back a product that brings that commercial component back to that. I think it's clear from what you've heard tonight, from my interaction with you from the very beginning, to my consulting of staff and outsiders, from public testimony. We're all in favor of this, but done the way Georgetown wants. We want to see affordable housing. We want to see commercial brought, or else put it in a residential area that can sustain this, what you're looking for. I can't justify, or I cannot force you to do to do anything. That's your decisions and things like that. But I also want you to know that Georgetown, including this board, is very concerned about future developments. And they're also about to pass an ordinance to require a 20% commitment to the whole development for affordable housing. So you would have to have 20% of whatever you're proposing for affordable. That would meet the AMI of 80%. So, and Georgetown is very firm on that because we don't want your development if you can't do that. Again, we want you to bring something that Georgetown wants. If not, it's going to hurt us in the long term. And so we are very aware of consequences that will affect future decisions and outcomes. And it's hard to share these things because we desperately need these things. But what we see is what the long term is going to cause. And it's greater, more harm than having to not have that development right now. Because there will come a development that there will be others that come in and say, we will do what you want. And so that's what we would like for you to do, is to come back and bring that product to us. And so I think that's my sentiment that I wanted to share with you. I think your product is amazing. I've looked at it. I think it is fascinating what it can do. It's just in the wrong place. And I think that's the part that I'm mostly concerned about. So.
You can respond.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that where we are, this place we're stuck at is, as I said, I've been doing this for 40 years. I don't believe you can bring an affordable component with the market the way it is, the cost of everything, the cost of entitlements, the cost of construction, the cost of development. As I said, I think the special sauce to doing that is to repurposing existing buildings. We would love to be up in Georgetown. That's why I've been so dogged in pursuing this. We love this community. We think it's a great place. We think there's a demand here. We're business guys. So we see the demand here and we think we can meet it in a unique way. And we would love to work with you. But, we work in the world of the market and you're stewards of the community. And we have to, if it's going to work, we have to find some way to do it. I think that this is a great way. I'm confused, honestly, a little bit, and I'll just say it on the record, by the public testimony, because the gentleman that spoke before this gentleman did meet with me about 8 or 10 months ago and encouraged everything we're doing and promised to bring a cadre of business owners to the first meeting we had, and everybody was under an SUP, and then went cold on me. So, he owes me nothing, but I'm just completely aghast at where he stood on this, because maybe he wouldn't even make eye contact with me. I was just shocked at that. So I don't know what that's about, and it's probably neither here nor there. We would love to be in Georgetown, and we would love to provide an option for housing here that's attainable and is going to enhance what happens in this community. We know we can do it. We're not wet behind the ears. We've done this. We've done thousands of units between my partner Peter and I. And we know what we're doing, and we know we can make it work and be proud of it. We're hands-on guys, we're local guys. We come into a community, we have a stake in it, it's our money. And we aren't going to put something in that isn't going to work, because we're not massive developers that can afford to have 20% of their developments go on. They got to work. So we'd love to work with you. We don't see anything in town here in terms of land. We talked to you at one point even about the city land, and the city isn't ready to do it, to commit to that. And that's the cities. That's for them to decide. So we can bring something interesting and good here. The idea of highest and best use is a great argument, and in certain contexts, that is exactly what needs to happen. But when you have a housing problem, and you may not agree that there is one, most people do, and I don't mean that to be arrogant or pedantic in any way, there is an issue, and there has to be a flexible way of thinking. And maybe I'm in the wrong place, maybe I'm in the wrong town, and maybe this town doesn't want what we have to offer as it is. You said you like what we do, and thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. But to come in and do ground up, there's no way that'll work. There will be at 2,400. By the time it's built, it'll be $3,000. And that's not going to solve the problem. That's just going to exacerbate the problem in many ways.
Well, and I get what you're saying, and stuff tends to balance itself out, but it goes both ways. You're wanting to be at 12 to 1,400. Obviously, you've done your numbers, and that's what works to make it work. You don't want to do anything not to make money. Building costs are outrageous. But also, with that being said, it's the same thing that happened down the street. You run them out at 1,200, then they're 1,400, then the next year they're 1,800. And I think at some point stuff will balance itself out. But outside of that being, for me, the way I look at that, that's commercial. If we lose commercial, then we lose a future tax base. If this was something that wasn't in such a commercial area, I love everything that you did. And I think as much as stuff goes up, when you stop renting them for the max that you can get, the max maybe becomes less. And in some future world, probably won't happen anytime soon. People could actually afford to live here, or maybe actually afford to live in Colorado. The hardest thing I have is, and it's what everybody says, it goes back to that same thing. Forget about all that. It is a commercial space, and the town does, we need housing, but we also need commercial space. Every time a business opens, they last a year or two, and then those people move on. Eventually, people come in, but businesses also fail because of all these same things. And then the town obviously is going to lose the tax base off of that too. And it seems like it's a much higher rate. Plus, once we lose commercial, it doesn't come back. We do have other spots that this fits, but then as you said too, I get building cost. It's just building residential houses. What we used to be able to do now has gone up 50%. Mark had spoke, he understands that too for the stuff he's involved with. But the difference that he's able to do is actually give people that live here full time. With something like this, I think they will live here full time for what it is. But then I think people, that move out here to Colorado, and it's happened. This is the short time I've been in this town. For all the people that have moved here since I've been here, we get one person who lose two. And those are people with kids that could have worked here, that then now they lose that. That's a tough one for where that spot's at. I'm not saying that commercial does any better, but people put a lot of effort in setting up zoning for certain reasons for this area. And it's it's like Craig had said, to change that now without actually doing our own research long-term for that would be tough.
And it definitely requires sort of unorthodox thinking. I get that. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You know, I wanted to make one other comment on one of the public comments from one of the letters from the DRC is that this is not short term. This is not short term. I've never said it was. It's not an extended stay hotel. I could probably do that by rights. So under the zoning, I think I never looked, but don't take my word.
Well, we're changing the zone soon.
Yeah.
That would require upgrades. You know, that if it's gonna go over 29 days, it would have to be upgraded to code to do, yes, so you do have a right by use accordingly where you're at. If you were to do, but you would have to upgrade all of them to do a long term.
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm not a hospitality expert, so I'm just saying that's not the business we're in. And, you know, nor would we come into town, you know, and quack like a duck, but we're actually, you know, something else, you know, and try to stuff people in these places and not fix them up. It's just not, you know, you can look at our whole portfolio of everything we've ever done. And you'll see that there's this pride of ownership, and we made some, you know, we changed lives. We have. I'm not trying to like blow ourselves up. You know, if we're not wanted here as is, and I'm not taking it personally, I'm just saying this property, this concept, this place, that's fine. I don't see any other option for us. You know, I see, you know, down at the apartments down by the lake, you know, there's, you know, a foundation permit that was sitting for 3 years. There's a reason for that. It's not the town. There's a reason for that. The town can take 3 years to approve it. But there's a reason, because I don't know what the reason is, but nobody buys land and that spends all that money and sits for 3 years unless there's a real economic reason. And I don't know exactly what that is, if it's cost of building, if it's, I don't know what it is. I don't pretend to know what it is, but I know that's a red flag for a developer. This we could bring to market in months and not, I mean, assuming we got the DRC, but, you know, we would be in the marketplace in months, not in years. I know for sure, because we just did it in a thing that's 3 times the size of this. And in many ways harder, because all of our trades and suppliers would work here from Denver, all of them. There ain't no way. And that's another world out there. It's 7 hours from Denver.
Let me repeat what you've already heard, but I want to say it just as a wrap up. I'm quite interested in the type of project you're doing. I've lived here for 32 years now, and it has been an amazing change from the time I've begun. So you can look at it now and say, well, you come into the town and there are just these little buildings that are sitting there. But there's been a lot of really, really positive change. So when you came in before, you came in on dirt streets. There were 3 gas stations at the entry to town. It was just sort of brown all around. And there's not been that much new construction, but there's been some. There's been a lot of fix-up. There's been a lot of investment by, I'm going to call them outsiders, not as a negative, but they don't live here, in just buying houses and renting them, which is not necessarily a positive, but there are various economic reasons that are not unique to Georgetown. They're common throughout the whole country of why we're not moving forward. But the one thing I would say for Georgetown is that it's been very consistent in updating plans and such, and thinking through why things should be the way they are. And I'm open to change. So it doesn't mean that can't change. I'm just saying that we're not a community that just goes on the whim of, well, this is going to solve our problem. And you're not saying that, but nonetheless, a lot of things will say this will solve our problem. I grew up in a town where they tore down the old county courthouse in the middle of town square and put up 4 sort of strip mall kinds of units. And when that didn't work, then they got all the downtown brick stores to put aluminum siding on it to make it look more welcoming. Really just, all the various things that one can do as you move along doesn't always work. And I think hanging in there where we've sort of gotten to, and if someone can come along and show us something that works within the concept that we've given to that area of town, even though it doesn't look so terrific right now, we have faith that at some point it will. And, I'm sorry that we've gotten to that point where what you're proposing just won't work with what we're kind of stuck on at this point. And that's stuck in a negative way, but just stuck because we've been working at it for a long, long time.
I really appreciate that, and thanks for explaining that, and I'll just leave you with one final thought, and then it's up to you anyhow, but, as a developer, for anything to grow, and I don't mean to be arrogant here in any way, but for anything to happen commercially, which is the heartbeat of a town, right? Is the commercial taxes. You don't make any money off of houses, really. It's off a commercial taxation rate. In order for that to happen, there has to be rooftops, so to speak, the kind of the parlance that we use, right? And so, if you're going to build a little strip mall with, 5 side by side stores, there has to be a certain number of rooftops to support it, right? So you're in a funny place here, in my opinion. I don't live here; I live down the hill in Denver. But you need these people here to support the businesses, to grow the businesses, to attract the businesses. And I think that it's a really like a dovetail deal, in order to get an increase in commercial tax base, you need to find ways to first house the workers that already are here and are struggling, and then be able to have a place for the newer people as commercial grows. That's a given in any place at any time. Again, I don't mean to be pedantic if I'm coming off that way, but that's it, and that's why I'm hearing where you're at entirely. I get it's really hinging on the zoning, the rezoning of commercial. So I understand it completely. I would just say that I think you should think about this carefully, because I think it really, while you're taking away something, you're gaining far more in the long term. And of course, I think that I'm a developer. This is, but I do believe it in my heart. I do. Every project we do, my heart is in it, and my guts and my skin is in it. I'm not doing stuff in, Jackson Hole and just going up there to ski a couple times a year. It's not the way I operate. That's not the way my partner operates.
And if in fact, and I do appreciate your differentiating affordable and attainable, but I don't see that attainable is really attainable if you can't afford to live in that place. And it's so, if you were doing that, I think we could all say, well, okay, that's a good trade-off. But I don't think we're at that point. At least I don't see it that way.
Well, and I was going to say too, because you mentioned with Craig, I think once he realized what you were charging for those, then just like all of us, and most of us have been around, I had a little business in town here. Craig does. Her son has worked, with her and lost the place because of how it got raised. I think what Craig realized real quickly was that what he pays his workers, it just doesn't work. And that's the tough part. It kind of doesn't. When you mentioned, that for a trade-off of commercial and that you need local people, running a coffee shop here for 4 years, 95% of what we made was tourist. And what came off that highway, that's the difference that we have versus, most small little communities. Yeah, you're based off of, typically when I was back in the Midwest, when we had different restaurants, we relied on, 80% of the business had to come within a 10 mile surrounding area just to make it. But here it's different. It's 90% off of what comes off of that highway. You're kind of part owners in Coopers or however you're a part of that you're building. I would have to bet that most all of it is all off of the highway traffic. You know, so
So it's not tourists that are working there, they still need people
true, but
close by to work there.
true, but the tourists or but our workers here are, but like we had mentioned, they're $15 an hour. You know, that cost right there, and that's if you leave it at that. Say if you start at 1,200, you know, there's no promises. The people down the street did the same thing. Oh, we're doing 1,800. Her son lived in one, then they raised it to 2,400. Now he doesn't live here anymore. You know, that's workers that we had for a coffee shop. It was like, they're just like, we can't just keep living with people and trying to sleep on a couch. You know, and you just can't afford to pay more because then it's the same thing. You don't want to do this without making money. Well, it's all that domino effect, that full circle.
We don't want an empty place either.
What's that?
We don't want an empty place either, so we have to serve the community. We have to, if you know, if we think that 1,400 or 1,200 or whatever isn't gonna work. I'd rather be home with my wife right now.
Well, no, it's true. And you know, and the thing of it is it's what's unique is you can get it. You know, they proved down the street that they can get it. But it's the longevity of that. You know, and you know, does the town sacrifice a commercial spot, you know, for a short-term need that may or may not work, that you may or may not, you know, because you're gonna rent those at what you can get. You know, it's, you know, I build houses. I'll sell the house of what I can get, but I don't put, you know, I'll sell it for what I can get out of it. You know, maybe I get somebody that's going to stay local, maybe I don't. But I'm not trying to rezone an area to do something that I think the town needs. You know, otherwise I'll put on affordable and I'll go that route, which is right. It's government subsidization, you know, but then that's the route I would go if that's what I wanted to do, you know, which is a different unique. And we've talked about it over and over. And I think, yeah, mostly it's a commercial issue. But, you know, if you have other land in town, then you see what you're dealing with, even if it becomes a residential issue, if that makes sense.
I like your concept. I think it's brilliant. However, in Georgetown, that won't work. The housing, if you can lower housing, make it affordable, it might work.
Like true affordable.
Right, but putting a commercial on the bottom and putting apartments on top would be ideal. You say it won't work. It works. I know it works. I lived in one. Okay. And it's in, of course, Texas. It's Dallas, Texas. And it's right off a highway, George Bush. And I cannot tell you how that commercial building itself on the bottom pops all the way from 9 o'clock in the morning, all the way to 10, 12 o'clock at night. Violence, drugs, whatever, never really happened because we had to get more police officers. Okay, which is another problem we have, which I brought up, the safety part and all of the welfare of the people here in town. So that's my biggest concern as well. But your concept is wonderful, but if you can come back with commercial and some housing on top, it might work.
Yeah, man, does that still work, Rick, with if it's commercial zone? I mean, we've talked about that, but I don't even fully understand the code on that, if that's even possible. Anyway, and I get when you say that because it's a different cost wise. I know it's different. I try to say commercial stuff.
In Augusta and Toronto, where I'm originally from, they do work in areas, but you need like a certain impetus of people and energy for that to work. Like, you know, there are so many businesses have come and gone here, and not because it's not a great place to be. It's a killer place to be, Georgetown. That's why everyone's here. And you're right on this highway that you get 1 billion people a season coming here, right? I mean, you know, why, you know, and so to add, like, I guess what would be, let's call it 20,000 more square feet. I don't know, maybe that's too much. 10,000 more square feet of commercial on the bottom level that doesn't have great visibility. That's what I'm saying won't work. This would most likely work. I think it's a little bit of the future because I just don't know enough about hotels. I've said that. To do something with building D down here, that might be some potential. That would, again, I think you'd want to really think carefully is for the community, for the people here. Would it be better to have commercial there? Or would it be better to have some community area for the people that live there? And for the people of Georgetown, really, because it could be open to both. That's another story. I don't know. So I'm not opposed to commercial on there. I'm not opposed to it, but I personally, I don't think you could have commercial along the bottom of this building and this building. And it would be viable. There's no way it would be viable. That's my opinion.
Well, yeah, and it still becomes tough too, like we said, with safety concerns. You know, it's with all the apartments that we have down the street, just that, you still get people walking blindly up and down the street. I'm sure Randy knows of that more than I do. But just a few times I try to stay away from there. When you put that amount of people on that side of the road stuck in that area, people want to do stuff. I love the idea of how you had its own little communal area and stuff. I think that's awesome. You obviously know this aspect of it. But then it still comes in that same issue without, you know, now all of a sudden, if we do this, then we're catering to that for how the street is, how where people can move around there versus like what you say, well, if it's commercial, you lose that space for what you can get. But then that just leads me more to be more commercial for all of it. A, because it was zoned like that, and because of where it's at, and as far as people, you know, if that's in a sense lower income, so say you get people that don't drive, but then we're getting better. We have the roundabout that takes people down to different towns and stuff. That's pretty new in the last couple of years. That helps, but then also too, now you have that many more people crossing those streets and stuff. That makes it tough for that too. Like I said, I wish it was on the other side where it was a better fit, more down by the lake. I wish this whole place was down there because I love what you have. Even if I don't agree that it's affordable, we still need more housing, you know, and there's not a whole lot of stuff left. But, you know, sure, it goes in the same thing. If you do this, then maybe Mark comes to us with the land that he owns and now he wants to do residential. Well, you guys let him do it, and then we lose all of our commercial. That's the real key here. It's not that we don't love your project and that, and you know, and it's this town is, you know, uniquely tough, but for its reasons, and it's a slow process. But everybody in this town has a super passion for wanting stuff to go the right way, and more times than not. And I find myself in that position. Oh, this is a great idea. And I vote for it, and then it never really goes the way that it should have, you know, and stuff changes. I get it. But then it makes me the same way. You know, when I look at this, it's like, man, it's all the years of making this commercial, putting that effort into this and having it that just to change it for something that, yeah, we clearly need is really, really tough.
Just food for thought, our visitor center sees over 356,000 people a year. That's how many tourists come through our town. And that's whether Circle K or whether it's going to the coffee shop that's on the roundabout, whether it's going to Cooper's, whatever their need is, that's how many people. So you might want to go back and think about that commercial. It might pay off in the end. Just food for thought.
Anybody else have any more questions? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
It is 7:55 and I will close the hearing. Close the public hearing. And now we can discuss. Do you have any questions? Anything to talk about? I think we covered.
I already said what I thought.
Yeah, always, I like to double check with everybody, make sure everything's been talked about. We can make a motion. Anybody would like to make a motion?
Okay. Okay, I'll do it. I make a motion to deny. Can I do that?
Yeah.
We have to give reasons.
Oh, I can give you tons.
Okay.
Public safety, public welfare, cooking in small areas. Can I keep going?
Well, that in zoning issues.
I know. Zoning, I think we should keep it the way it is, though. I mean, what our forefathers have done, I think was like,
And most likely 4 mothers as well.
Yeah. I think what he said was correct. They did a very good job on it, and it is all commercial, and I think it needs to stay that way. Now, whether we put housing on top of that, I'm all for that, but I think commercial is the way to go. So I motion that we deny it because of all of my good reasons.
Okay.
And I can keep going. I have a whole list for y'all.
I'll second that one.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Sorry, and thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you. It was a great.
Incredible.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad to do it.
Affordable, commercial, there you go. I like
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a break.
Okay.
Before we go to the-
We have another topic.
Yeah, I know.
We're not gonna talk about it's.
I know, we have another one.
But we don't have anybody here for it.
Well, so far, I haven't
We got some attendees on Zoom.
And we don't have any new information.
Must have on
Okay, it's over here in the last part of the tail.
Sure, see this comment, is that really all?
See, I did a list right here. I'm like, I got all this stuff.
For the hotel.
Thanks, Andy. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was awesome. Because I was trying to bring out.
It's just,
This is right there. So you know, when I'm in the office and I'm doing all that, I can't get out of there some minutes. It's crazy.
It was a beautiful presentation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what a project.
It needs to be on the other side of the
Place for it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's great. No. it's-
Said I'd argue that.
Like. Building. It was a huge step up from my VW bus when I graduated.
That's why, like you said, though, the tough part is when you look at it, just towards the evenings, just people from apartments walking to the dollar store.
Right.
And I know part of the conference and fine, maybe eventually it gets changed, but that's so dangerous. So you're gonna take 100% commercial area and add all this population that people, where they all just go, I see you back.
Have our new project completed.
Yeah,
I wonder if you approach the other hotel.
see, that's a much better spot, right?
Oh, yeah.
That would be awesome.
The other Georgetown mountain in.
And yeah,
It's too small of an area.
Well, but there's still those parking issues in that, and that's where like, the one that I didn't check in with this.
I think Crazy Horse and.
Yeah.
oh, crazy horse, yeah.
But that's all
Sure.
commercial as well.
Yeah, that is commercial.
It's not, potential would want to be considered different.
Well, we looked at that.
Front is and a housing building.
Just something small.
Yeah.
Well, so if we tried to get that property for going north on the front, but there was enough for parking in the back for upstairs. For park-
I wanted to buy that until I found how much you wanted for it.
That's got great supply.
How much do you want yours?
He wanted 2 million. That's what he told me. I said, are you?
For Crazy Horse.
Yes, what a crazy horse. Yeah,
Different place.
that's crazy.
We're ready to go. All right, public hearing for long-term hotel stays, proposed regulations. Same process for the public hearing procedure. We will open the hearing for the application. The time is 8 o'clock. And it's now time to question the staff. What you got first, Rick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
So you want okay. Well, you've had a chance, I hope all of you had a chance to read, staff reports and everything. This is from Martin as well. And
I don't think I've had the staff report on that.
no, well, this is the memorandum. This is from Jerry Dahl. This is just the memo that he gave in discussions of what we're
okay.
considering. It's the same parcel that we're just discussed. It's the current situation is, we brought this to the planning commission, I believe in 2016 or so. And we had concerns back then of, it's a facility that is doing a use that wasn't designed to do, which is a long-term stay. It's a facility, even the code upgrades were not designed for long-term living. Doesn't have kitchenettes, and then people they're staying there long-term with, and then they bring their own little microwaves or stove tops and things like that. And they're living there long-term. And some of them, the facilities or the units have been in such crazy disarray that they've built walls up and living in pallets. And I mean, there's no supervision and insight inspections to see what's really going on, which then is caused to become a cesspool of all kinds of safety hazards and everything else.
And you're saying that's in the same building?
Same building that we were just talking about, the Roost.
Okay.
Well, it's not the Roost, but it's Georgetown Lodge.
Yeah.
So back in 2016, it was brought to you to consider making an ordinance of what long-term stay is going to be and having consistent recommendations and conditions for that to be allowed. We allowed, I believe back at that time, for the hotels and motels to be part of the conversation of allowing them to self-regulate in a sense of like, okay, show that you can monitor this and do the right things. And so it was then brought to the Board of Selectmen, and it just kind of was tabled and never brought back. And at the same point, the other part that became a concern was there was no self-regulation. So they said that they would do it, and it just didn't happen until now. What we see now is it's a lot of transient people. It's probably the place in all of Georgetown that our officers have to go in for calls constantly versus our regular community. It's just because of the kind of community that happens to be there. And so it's risen to the point where Randy has brought it back to the Board of Selectmen saying, this is an issue and we need to resolve this. We need to bring that code back. And so what the staff decided to do is, let's bring it back in discussion. Is this really an issue? Then we brought it back to you guys to discuss, or we brought it back to, let's bring it, instead of just because it was tabled, let's bring it back to the Board of Selectmen. They decided to punt it back to us, because, it's everyone's new. Let's get back to, let's really look at it. Let's have a chance to have the public comment. And so, I believe we sent it to the motels and hotels. We did. So they also got a copy of the memo of what we're proposing. Was there anything that came in? Any comments? Okay. I actually had a conversation with Brittany Patel. She's the owner of the Microtel, or one of the owners. She's a manager owner. And I asked her, they're renting to their staff. And they're not designed to be long-term either. Mm-hmm. And would they have, in order to, looking at this new potential code revision, anyone doing 29 days or greater, is it greater than 29 days?
Yes.
Yeah, if it's greater than 29 days, then they would have to upgrade to the facility standards and so forth. There's lots of other things that were mentioned in here. And also agreeing that inspections would have to be regular, maid service and things like that. And she responded to me and said, they will not do that. Meaning they're not going to do long-term stay. They won't do that. They just don't, their facilities were not designed to be long-term stay. It creates a headache more than that they think is worth the investment in. So, anyways, this is kind of situation. I also, since Randy's here, I want to let Randy have a chance because he's been involved the entire time and he kind of can speak more into that. So I'm going to defer now to Randy for more comments.
Okay. Excuse me. As town administrator said, this was brought to light in 2016 between Idaho Springs, Georgetown. We really had an influx of problems with the motels, hotels that allowed people just to move in and live there indefinitely. very much came to light here at Georgetown Lodge specifically, which was under multiple different names since then. We went into rooms where they had 5 or 6 people living. They would partition off little forts. They brought in building material and partition off where, oh, me and my girlfriend live in there, and my mom lives here, and our sisters and all this. And these are all adults. They were, as far as public health goes, absolutely awful. As far as crime, we were in there for reasons repeatedly. So we brought it to the planning commission. They pushed it to the board of select persons. And as was described, it was suggested that the motel, hotel owners should be able to self-manage it. And that's why it was tabled in 2016. I believe part of the management of all these businesses were, they thought it had passed. So there was some compliance for quite a while. And then it waned. It waned significantly to, we are not quite where we were in 2016, but we're on a slope heading in that direction. We have families that have moved into Georgetown Lodge and been there for months and months. It's unfortunate that we're at a stage that something like this previous plan would have just helped miss it and eliminated this conversation. That would have switched around and as long as it's changed and we can move forward. Point of this wouldn't have been here anymore, or the strong point of it wouldn't. However, we have to try to put some accountability on the motel owners' managements. And the only way we're going to do that is by creating ordinances as such. So what's been presented is what was previously presented in 2016. It's basic, it needs some dialing in by the board of selectmen for the language of the ordinances and to make allowances. If there are times allowances are necessary. We have big projects where they have rooms rented out to companies for their employees, and there was allowances for those. There's employees that need places to stay. Unfortunately, the motels that, or specific motels in particular, have so many employees you don't even know who they are. They can say going out and having cigarettes in the parking lot, their parking lot security, and trying to earn parts of the rent, and that's why they don't fall under this restriction of 29 days or less. So
But I'm not sure, but these are people who are there for more than 29 days. Right?
absolutely. I have.
So I mean, why would it be on? I'm not suggesting that we do this, but why wouldn't it be legal to just go to them and give them a notice that they have to be, that they're all evicted?
Currently, we don't have any ordinance where
Well, you don't have.
we do not have an ordinance or the authority to do that.
Okay.
Our previous ordinance has language in it for 90 days, which could almost be placed into effect now. But there needs to be some stronger language as far as enforcement goes.
Well, and my quick question, just while we're on it, you know, also too, even going with this 29 days. They stay there for 29 days, they go stay someplace else for a couple of days and then come back for 29 days again. How do we make sure that?
So that's a good question. I think what we're trying to do, and that's why we're presenting it to you, is we would like to create an ordinance that gives restrictions and requirements. If they were to do 29 plus days, then the hotel would have to be licensed, saying that they're going to do that. They would have to show that it's going to be inspected X amount of days while they're there. Like, is it once a week they have to have an inspection? You have to have limits of who can stay and how many people can stay in the room. It would have to be firewalls put in, what was sprinkler system. kitchen facilities. It would
Be set up for long.
It would have to be set up for a long term, but right now, we don't have a regulation except for 90 days. But on that, we're trying to create an ordinance so that if they were to do long-term stay, the official way, we would have conditions for that to happen. And that's why we're bringing, you saying, we would like to go back to the 2016 and bring it back today and then have a recommendation to go back to the Board of Selectmen so that we can work on an ordinance.
Well, one thing I was gonna tell you too, Randy, that, like you said, well, if the previous one would have passed, it would have solved this problem.
Correct.
But I don't believe that because what keeps, the more people pay, that's farther away from affordable housing is. And so say if we'd have passed that and he's at 1,400 a month, you would have had 2 people living in each of those units. But then there would have been nothing that you could have done about it. And does that lead to the same problem that's already there?
I don't think so. I think because if we would have passed the regulations to have inspections.
Well, no, not with inspections, but off of this, but that wouldn't have solved the problem as it was. Do you follow what I'm saying? If he would have made that residential, then it would have almost made it easier because, I get what he was trying to do. But, and he's saying they're based off of one person, but what, like right now you have that place with all these people living in there. So then you're creating the same thing because I don't know what obviously it doesn't cost much by the day, but if it's $100 a day, then that's even more expensive. And you have more people living in there than what you would have had with this. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't think
And then you wouldn't have had enough parking.
yeah, then you lose the point.
It's definitely circular.
So I think we still would have had the same problem, just in a different kind of way.
Well, his proposal, his presentation made it that would not have been a problem, but it has so many other peripherals. That would be a great project for a different location.
Well, yeah, he says that it wouldn't have been, but it still goes back to the same thing. It is a problem because that's what we're fighting against right now. Stuff that was created into livable spaces and rented that people go, well, I want to do that. And you let them do it. Well, the town never let them do that. They're doing it anyway. So
both with manpower and the fact that really when it comes up is more reactive to problems than proactive to following through. But by the time we reach that spot, we're not in a position to be able to enforce any of it.
Right.
So if we start and, okay, here's the new rules, we need this new ordinance. One of the pieces in the packet should be this suggested ordinances, which is just a boilerplate starting position. These need to be dialed in much more specifically through further hearings. However, the Board of Select Persons decided, just in all fairness, let's bring it through the whole process again, which is why we're here tonight. So,
and I agree with, and that's where I was going with that. I think regardless, this needs to be addressed. And to me, and we do it in commercial stuff all the time. We had a coffee shop. When we took it over, we had to update to the new health code.
right.
Like that's how the process works. And when you look at all it's really, people complain about it. Oh, well, it costs over the safety issues. And we want to keep people safe. And that's what this is. It's when people look at it on one side, well, I'm not going to update my place. Well, because it costs. But by not following the rules, there's more consequence that people never realize that they don't want to address. Well, you guys are going against me personally, they take it personally. And actually it's not. Think about all the resources that goes into this when people don't follow rules. All the times you guys are there trying to take care of stuff, the unhealthy conditions that people live in. So yeah, I'm definitely in favor of this.
And hopefully with our newly appointed position of a code enforcement officer, we will have manpower to be able to dedicate more specifically to. At least as long as it's not.
Keep the town safe.
I don't know what the rest of the world's going to do for the next duration, but at this point, and we will definitely show a need for his position for further enforcement. if for some reason we could ever get our police department fully staffed, it would be stellar. He's the happiest guy. You guys were wondering what I'm smirking about. That's all I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, and Denise brought it up, it's been 2 years ago now, by needing code enforcement and.
That was my first thing. Very first thing I said,
Ago.
I said it right to Kent when he was sitting. I said, Kent, we need a code enforcer. I said, this town is awful.
It's so particular.
It is true.
And trying to find the right person is what's most important.
Tim's pretty cool though. I'll give you that. I like Tim.
We're trying to work in that direction, trying to find the right person. I would be lying if I said we've never had any applicants for positions. But I have a lot of resources and can do a lot of background checks. And there are a lot of applicants, but we don't want to be one of those agencies that just pick up anybody and everybody, rogue or not, that cause all the problems. So we've had successes and less successful successes, but I'm going to keep hammering at it for a while and see if we can do better. So code enforcement person is going to help us. Getting this dialed in is going to be a chore, and it's not going to happen overnight. But we want to try to move forward so this can get in place, so we can start having the teeth necessary to put it at least before our municipal courts instead of a lot of empty threats.
Well, that's a tough part too, because if you guys are involved with stuff that shouldn't be happening in the first place, then it leaves the whole rest of the town open for stuff that you know, it's crazy how that works, you know. Yeah, you guys can't be everywhere at once, and you're so limited that it makes it tough. Yeah, thanks so much.
So this
Thank
is
you.
a public hearing. We have no public.
We have a Sally.
Yeah. Well, and also too, that was commissioned, what the staff, the applicant presentation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just us.
So we're not, it's just, that's us.
We're presenting, requesting that we move forward with an applicant, with an ordinance. Yeah, so we would like to create an ordinance, but we were tasked to come back to you. Instead of just bypassing this board, we felt like it was important to get your feedback. But also, I mean, you're part of the code, you know, you're the legislative part as well, which means you get to enact code. And this is an issue that we want to address. We feel like it's a need, and it's a loophole that has been abused, and we're trying to close that loophole. And that's all I have.
Okay,
Thank you.
so you don't need a motion or.
Well, I would like for you
Want a
to,
motion?
yeah,
Well,
let me.
why don't we close the public hearing?
Well, let's do public, do we have public testimony?
Yeah. Sally, we see you're on Zoom. Do you have any comments?
No, I don't have any input on it. Well, a little tiny bit. Always have something to say, I guess. Hold on just a second. So I listened to your complete meeting and was very interesting. Thank you. And I just want you to know I'm Sally Rush. I live in Empire and I'm participating. This is a public comment as a resident of Clear Creek County, not an employee of the government. However, as a resident of Clear Creek County and my experiences over the last few years, I've had a lot of interface with people who turn to these motels as a place of last resort. And if you want, we don't have a homeless program in this county. By default, these motels have become that piece of that puzzle. When someone is homeless, they will end up going to these motels for a few days, a few weeks, or whatever they can work out. And I've often wondered how the motel itself has spiraled into this kind of this kind of market, so that all of a sudden, that's what this motel has become, and they don't make improvements. And it's not just this one, it's other ones throughout the county. So there is a law that is very difficult to enforce, and it doesn't apply to these motels per se, but a lot of that law has some language in it that makes you think, if there's going to be someone long-term, how do you want them to have a recourse if they're living below health and safety standards? And that's the warranty of habitability. And so it is not effective a lot because it's hard to enforce, but I think it has some good thoughts parallel to what you're thinking about improving the health and safety for this property. And I believe the big thing that I heard the police chief say was enforcement. That's the key. So I hope that that this works out well for you, and thank you very much. And I don't know if you have a question of me. Oh, by the way, I want to have another aside. Can I have another aside? I want to talk about what affordability is. And I think that is such a broad range, and it's good to see that your planning commission has a good handle on their vision of what you want your town to look like. When you talk about housing for employees, that was not a fit, in my opinion. That's my opinion only. But when you talk about affordability, I've talked about it with Rick, you can define it 1,000 different ways. So make it work for you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You
want a motion?
Yeah, well, I think I will it is 8:23 and I will close the hearing to the public. I think,
I think we're ready to just make a motion basically on the proposed ordinance. That would go for this, just because of health reasons, security reasons, sanitary reasons, it's disgusting. Sorry, but yeah, it's awful. I mean, we gotta do something about that. I think we can get more specific in here to help the police force. I think that's something that needs to be done too. So do we have to send it to the Board of Selectmen for approval, but do we put the conditions to add more staff, or how do we do that?
I think we just task the staff to begin to
Okay,
let you know, because it was tabled so long, we need your approval to move forward, recommendation to move forward to start working on this.
so I motion to recommend that we move forward on this regulation and that the staff kind of finance it a little better for us.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Oh, cool.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Right,
That's good. I didn't even realize that was going on.
So we don't, we're looking at the last meeting, or is that?
No, this is the special meetings, and we're gonna move the regular.
It's next time. Okay, gotcha. Oh, so I adjourn this meeting then.
Oh, wow.
Well, let's have a first and a second.
Yeah, I motion to adjourn this meeting.
Did somebody else motion beside me?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we adjourn this meeting. Well, I can still talk.
I'm brainstorming. All in favor, say aye. I do good to serve one of my own kind of done now.
Yeah.
It's easy. Well, you know what? Love the way that we